Welcome today to the presentations from students that are taking PUBH 491, the Academic Health Department class, and from summer 2025. So my name is Tony Ward. I'm a professor in the School of Public and Community Health Sciences at the University of Montana. And today we're going to hear from 6 students that have been taking this class, this Academic Health Department class from summer. So this is a class that developed out of the Academic Health Department collaboration the University of Montana has with Missoula Public Health. And the first time this class was offered was spring 2025. So this is the second time this class has been offered. And really what this class is meant to do is take topics that were identified through this Academic Health Department arrangement, put these topics out in front of students and have them pick topics that they are interested in addressing. So not only learning more about the problem, but perhaps more importantly, providing up to 5 suggestions on ways that we can directly address these problems that not only are applicable to Missoula County, but every single county in the state of Montana. So this Academic Health Department relationship began in 2019, so right before COVID-19. And at the time, we were working on projects related to neighborhood surveys, community health assessments, wildfire smoke, immunization services, delivery research, and then COVID-19 hit. So over the next couple of years after that, the Academic Health Department really focused on COVID-19 related projects. And then the last couple of years, this Academic Health Department has been focused on the houselessness issue in Missoula County and surrounding counties. And we've had, I think, 6 or 7 active research projects going on between Missoula Public Health and the University of Montana, and also including Gallatin County and also the State Health Department, and really trying to figure out new and creative ways to address the unhoused issue in our rural counties, and more specifically in Missoula County. So in April 14th, 2025, we had an annual conference, as we have one every single year for the Academic Health Department. At that conference, we really presented the results of the multiple projects focused on houselessness. So we are also looking at kind of the next step, like what are other topics of interest that we would like the Academic Health Department, leveraging students and faculty and staff and health department employees, not only from Missoula County, but Gallatin County, State Health Department, and other counties that are interested in being a part of this. How do we identify new topics for all of these folks to work on? And so we created a laundry list of issues facing our rural communities that included issues related to aging, behavioral health, houselessness, and environmental health and climate change. So this Academic Health Department class, Friday, tomorrow, is the last day of the 10-week semester. And as part of the final deliverables, the 6 students that were working in the class had to do a presentation or submit a paper on their issue that they had identified in 5 solutions, and also had to give a presentation. So this is the presentations that you're going to hear today. And I'll also note that these are not just 6 students that are right out of undergrad. These are, working public health professionals in our state too. So hopefully they take information that's applicable to their own health departments and also applicable to other health departments across the state. So a sharing of findings on kind of what are some of the emerging issues and what are best practices in addressing these issues. So first up, I am going to introduce Ms. Carrie Mueller from Missoula Public Health, and she will be giving her presentation related to air quality in Missoula Valley.
Great, thank you so much, Tony. Let me share my screen again. All right, can you guys see everything all right?
Looks great.
Great. Okay, So as Tony mentioned, my name is Carrie Mueller, and I work as an air quality specialist with Missoula Public Health. And I'm here to talk to you guys about proactive solutions to address increased air pollution sources due to growth west of Missoula, Montana. I'm part of the academic health department class, and I am currently in the program to complete a certificate of environmental health sciences as part of UM's School of Public and Community Health Sciences. So a little background on this topic. Missoula County has been seeing a lot of growth. A lot of people have been moving into Missoula County, and this graph here just shows the increase of people over the last 50 or 30 years. In 2023, we had approximately 120,000 people, and we need more spaces for these people to go. We have a housing shortage in Missoula County, especially in Missoula, and Missoula County has kind of identified the Y area, which is just west of Missoula, as an area to expand to and to focus development in. From the Y infrastructure assessment that Missoula County did, they found that the Y area is experiencing profound transformation and is now evolving into a crucial transportation hub, brimming with opportunities for significant industrial, residential, and commercial development, but several challenges persist. And so with this increase in development in the area, it kind of raises some thoughts around air pollution and the sources of air pollution in this area. Just west of the Y is a town called Frenchtown. And we're kind of focusing, I'm kind of including Frenchtown in this conversation because it's another area that development could expand to. So a little history on Missoula's air quality. Missoula has experienced poor air quality in the late 1900s due to several sources, such as teepee burners, residential wood combustion from wood stoves and fireplaces, as well as gravel roads. And those are just to name a couple. Missoula actually exceeded the federal National Ambient Air Quality Standards for PM10, which is particulate matter 10 microns in size, back in 1969, which is the same year that the Air Pollution Control Program was established at the Missoula City County Health Department, which is now called Missoula Public Health, where I work. So through this program, rules were created to manage air pollution, including mandating paving, restricting solid fuel burning device installations, and a lot more. And since then, Missoula's air quality has greatly improved due to these measures, and they really act as a great framework to address future air quality concerns, such as what might occur in the Y and Frenchtown area. And we already have Frenchtown on our radar because Missoula County has 3 regulatory monitors. And one of those is in Missoula, and another is in Frenchtown, another's up in Seeley Lake. But the Frenchtown monitor, on average, has higher PM 2.5 levels than Missoula, or particulate matter that's 2.5 microns in size. And so from 2022 to 2023, the 3-year running average in Missoula was 5.7 micrograms per meter cubed, whereas just less than 20 miles west in Frenchtown, it was 9.5 micrograms per meter cubed. And this is a really big concern because air pollution has a lot of negative health impacts. Just to name a few, PM 2.5 exposure is associated with respiratory and cardiovascular diseases and neurological disorders. There's been a lot of research around wildfire smoke and PM 2.5 exposure, and that's revealed that exposure can reduce lung function capacity, and it has a positive association with contracting influenza the following season, as well as exposure is associated with immune dysregulation and decreased lung function in children. So as part of this academic health department class, I'm proposing 5 solutions to address the potential increase in air pollution due to development west of Missoula. And the first one is evaluating current Missoula solid fuel burning device installation rules. Second is increasing wood stove education and outreach. And the third is implementing a wood stove changeout or heat pump installation program. And 4, expanding the Missoula air stagnation zone paving requirements west of Missoula. And 5 is evaluating outdoor burning zone impact zone M. So first, evaluating the Missoula solid fuel burning device installation rules. So Montanans rely on wood stoves to heat their homes, and the Y is partially inside the Missoula air stagnation zone, which is a zone created as part of the air pollution control program rules to manage air pollution. And the zone ends just in like the middle of the Y. And then Frenchtown is fully outside of the air stagnation zone. And the current rules around installing wood stoves or pellet stoves in the Missoula air stagnation zone, only pellet stoves with emission rates less than 1 gram per hour can be installed. And then outside of the Missoula air stagnation zone, only wood or pellet stoves with emission rates less than 4.5 grams per hour. And this really is an opportunity for concentrated installation of wood stoves in the Y and Frenchtown area, where just over the border in the air stagnation zone, people can only install pellet stoves. And so I'm proposing that the air program consider a lower emission rate for the wood stoves or pellet stoves that can be installed outside of the air stagnation zone, or expanding the solid fuel burning device rules associated with the air stagnation zone to the Y and Frenchtown or populated areas. The second solution is to increase wood stove education and outreach. The US EPA BurnWise program is a great program with educational resources to promote best practices for wood stoves to reduce air pollution. And the main thing that they like to promote is burning dry wood. And they have several successful BurnWise education examples for the air program to consider, such as establishing a wood moisture meter loan program, creating a registered wood seller wood moisture disclosure program, or a volunteer-based wood bank. Additional education and outreach activities include publishing educational articles in local papers, attending community events to talk with residents about wood stove operations, providing educational handouts throughout the community from BurnWise, including solid fuel burning device information to developers during development review periods, and promoting the installation of heat pumps for heat in new and existing homes. Which leads us into the third solution of implementing a wood stove changeout program or heat pump installation program. So solid fuel burning device technology has improved greatly since many older stoves were installed. And the AIR program has already run a successful wood stove changeout program in Seeley Lake in 2012 to 2014 to address residential wood combustion air quality concerns there. And these programs can be really successful, but we should also consider replacing the oldest wood stoves with newer, lower emitting wood stoves, or considering installing heat pumps as a supplemental heat so that people can reduce their use of wood stoves. And this could be considered for the Y and Frenchtown area if funding opportunities arises. This is definitely one of the solutions that costs a lot more than others. The fourth is expanding the Missoula air stagnation zone paving requirements. So when Missoula was non-attainment for PM10, several rules were created to require paving. And there are still many unpaved roads, even in residential areas west of Missoula, because they were not required to be paved. But in Missoula, most roads are paved now, and we only have a couple gravel roads left. So currently there are no requirements outside of the air stagnation zone unless it's required by different regulations like subdivision rules. And I propose to look at expanding some of those paving requirements to areas that are set to see a lot of expansion and development to reduce the air pollution from gravel roads. The fifth one is to evaluate outdoor burning zone M. Outdoor burning zone M is an area outside that has a larger boundary than the Missoula air stagnation zone, in which the air pollution control program can set restrictions for. But But this area is very large, and it includes both populated areas and unpopulated areas. And weather can vary a lot between the southern part of Impact Zone M and then the northwestern part, so Frenchtown versus Lolo. And so it's difficult to apply a burning restriction across all of Impact Zone M if burning conditions are just bad in Lolo. And so I'm suggesting that the AIR program consider creating some smaller zones for populated areas, similar to how they already have a couple burning zones for the Potomac area and Seeley Lake. In conclusion, air pollution poses a threat to public health and safety, and any expected increase in air pollution west of Missoula should be evaluated to take preventative actions where possible to manage air pollution. These are the 5 proposed solutions that I went over today, and that is the end of my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Carrie. I just have one question. So if you had like an unlimited budget, which, you know, is not likely to happen, but what one intervention would you really fund to make the biggest impact in Missoula County?
That's a really tough question. I think I would love to spend a bunch of time thinking about it, but off the top of my head, I really like the idea of installing heat pumps into homes because there's been a couple successful examples of this happening where instead of replacing the wood stove with another wood stove that is still causing air pollution, you're providing a resident with supplemental heat that they can use for those days that are not quite as cold, and they can still keep their wood stove as like a backup for extreme weather and really cold days. And so I watched a video from a tribe in Washington that implemented this program and gave 18 heat pumps or installed 18 heat pumps for residents, and the reviews were great from it, and they really liked the transition and said that the heat pumps worked really well. And so that's probably, I think, a solution that would really make a difference in reducing the source of PM 2.5.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Great job.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so next up, we have Anna Baxter, who I believe works at Lake County Health Department. So Anna, would you like to share your screen and give your presentation?
Sure, let me just pull it up here. I think we want to go here. How's that looking?
Looks great.
Okay. All right. Well, hello. My name is Anna Baxter. I work with the Lake County Environmental Health Department. And today I'm going to be discussing linking environmental dispossession to chronic disease and mental health, a public health response in the Mission Valley. This is for the academic health department course here in summer 2025. So just a little bit more about myself. So I'm a registered sanitarian and environmental health specialist here in Lake County. I've worked here since 2013. I do have an MPH degree from Drexel University, and I have an environmental health and occupational health focus. I am currently pursuing a certificate in epidemiology with the support of the Public Health Certificate Education Grant for the Montana Public Health Workers Program. So I'm excited about this opportunity to discuss a few things that are local to me. So what is environmental dispossession? So it is a separation from traditional lands, resources, and cultural practices. It's not only about losing land, but it's also about losing traditional ways of life, knowledge, and connections to the culture and nature. This loss continues to shape health outcomes today. There can be traditional knowledge and cultural ties can continue to erode. And then it also creates ongoing public health concerns based on the circumstances and environment that some of these communities are put into. So some context here in the Mission Valley. So the majority of the Mission Valley is within the boundaries of the Flathead Indian Reservation. We're located in Northwest Montana. The population of our valley is about 30,000 residents, of which about 24% are members of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. So the CSKT are the tribes within the Flathead Indian Reservation. So here is just an image showing where the boundaries of the reservation are here in yellow. Specifically, I was focusing on this corridor along Highway 93. There are a lot of tribal communities within that boundary, and so that is where my focus is. So I guess a little bit more about the valley here. There are several communities, incorporated towns, several areas that are specifically under tribal trust status. And then there's individuals who are not tribal members who also live within these boundaries. So key health impacts. So Native communities here have experienced higher rates of diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. The mental health impacts are also severe. So suicide rates are about 4 times higher for American Indians when compared to other races. There can be higher rates of mental health issues, including depression, substance use, and suicide. Some of the root causes for let me back up. The causes can go beyond the individual behaviors of people. So there can be issues from contaminated water sources, loss of traditional foods, climate change, systematic marginalization. So here in Lake County, there are a number of food deserts where there aren't many access available to healthy foods. So there are a lot of processed foods being eaten. The tribes have less access to hunting and gathering grounds. Climate change can result in issues like wildfire smoke, pesticides that can degrade land and the environment and cause health issues. And then there can be limited policy influence from the tribe when looking at the greater scale of our area. There's a lot of focus on non-tribal infrastructure, and those increasing infrastructure can have an impact on our environment as it relates to water, air, land use, and things like that. So I have 5 strategies that I'd like to review with you all for some proposed solutions. So those 5 strategies would be an environmental health surveillance program, culturally informed mental health services, restoration of land and green spaces, youth and community education, and then policy advocacy and partnerships. So just speaking a little bit more on that, and I am going to grab my notes page here because there's some important things I don't want to forget. So under the surveillance, community environmental health surveillance. So the idea there would be to empower local residents to monitor air and water quality using tools like low-cost sensors and mapping through like our GIS offices. Community members can collect and share data to guide local action, and it can be supported by training from our academic health departments. the collaboration between those academic health departments and tribal health departments. For the mental health component, the goal would be to offer mental health care that respects Indigenous traditions and addresses historical trauma. It can combine traditional healing like sweat lodges or storytelling with clinical care. And then the goal would also be to hire culturally competent providers and build trust through community-led programs. Another action item would be to restore land and green spaces. So the goals would be to reclaim degraded lands for community gardens, wetlands, or cultural sites. These projects would improve access to healthy food, encourage physical activity, and strengthen cultural connections. Academic health departments and local partners would be able to support restoration based on those community priorities. For youth and community education, the goal would be to teach environmental health in schools and community workshops, using intergenerational storytelling and Indigenous knowledge to empower youth as future leaders and promote stewardship. And then education helps build awareness, pride, and resiliency in the community. And then the last strategy, policy advocacy and partnerships. The push would be for stronger environmental protections, fair resource allocation, and recognition of tribal land rights. Academic health departments can partner across those sectors of tribes, health agencies, and drive policy changes that reduce health inequities and protect vulnerable communities. The makeup of jurisdictions within this area are kind of unique, where we have partnerships with our tribal health departments. We also work with the Department of Environmental Quality based in the state of Montana, but then also EPA regional representatives who also help manage some of the water quality, air quality issues within the reservation here. So it's a pretty broad umbrella of agencies that are taking care of our communities, but I think there can be improvements there just to, I guess, allow more of the community to have a voice on certain policies. So some of the roles of academic health departments, they can coordinate the surveillance and education. They can provide tools for those surveillance programs. They can collect the data and help provide, the breakdown of the data and how that information can be used to improve upon surveillance and education. Partnering with tribal councils, agencies, championing cultural respect and sustainable solutions, and then advocate for protective policies. So in conclusion, the dispossession can drive health inequities. Some of the solutions would be community-led, culturally grounded, and cross-sector, just so that everybody has a hat in the game. And then the academic health departments are key to bridging any gaps, restoring health, and fostering resiliency in the community. That it was a short presentation, but I would like to open it up for any questions or thoughts.
Thank you, Anna. That was really interesting. And I guess one thing that struck me was two of your solutions, surveillance and then education. It would be really cool if the students got involved with collecting data. So that's kind of combining two of your recommendations. And there's an initiative going on in the state called Public Health in the Schools. So the idea is to get public health curriculum into the schools, and then the next level above that would be to provide equipment for students to do research projects to get familiar with environmental health issues in the state. So I just think it'd be really cool if there was a mechanism to get like air samplers or water monitors or things like that into the hands of students, and then they're learning about public health. And that would be a great way for Lake County Health Department, Environmental Health Department, to engage with the students too. And really personalizes that learning experience in the Mission Valley. And I don't know, that's where my mind went when I was watching your presentation. Do you have any programs like that going on in Lake County?
We do not. We do work closely with our tribal colleagues. There is the Salish and Kootenai Community College here in Pablo, so that could also be a resource. Our office has provided some training for some of the classes that are taught over at the community college, but I think there could be more. I know that they are heavily involved with some of the irrigation and managing some of the more of the hydrology side of things in our valley. So I think there could be some good like groundwater monitoring. There's some good data on soils in our area, but I think that could be improved too. And all that can relate to improving water quality and protecting our groundwater. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Anna. That was really interesting. Next up, we have Kayla Harvey, who works at Butte Silverbow Health Department.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is Kayla Harvey. I am in Butte, Montana. I work at the Butte Silverbow Health Department. I've been a nurse for 12 years, with the last 3 of those years being in public health. And I'm in the environmental health certificate program through the U of M. My presentation today is on Butte's well water quality and concerns, and then proposed actions. So Butte, little snapshot here. For those of you that don't know, Butte is a Superfund site, and snapshot shows current mining activity and then also our Berkeley pit. So in 1983, we were designated a Superfund. That was after a century of underground mining. Currently, we have 7 operable units within the site, with one of those being the West Side Soils, operable unit 13. So that is west and north of the town, so in this region. So Uptown Butte, and kind of fun fact, our Uptown Butte is really the downtown of most cities, but since it is physically up the hill, we call it Uptown Butte. And then the town of Walkerville is here, so West Side Soils extends up above there as well. And so with my presentation focusing on well water within the West Side Soils operable unit, and this is another screenshot here of kind of the heart of town is in the orangish color. And then West Side Soils actually is also southeast of town, as well as this northwest area I showed on the previous slide. So kind of interesting that the boundaries of West Side Soil is fluid currently, and they're trying to, EPA is trying to determine the actual outline and boundary of that. So, but my information focuses on the northwest side of West Side Soils, excluding this southern end. So remedial investigation and risk assessment had started in 2018. It concluded in 2022. And then the report was completed and released last year. Within those results in the report, arsenic and uranium were found to be the main contaminants of concerns, with 3 of the 14 residential tap samples collected and 20 of the 41 groundwater well samples collected, showing above the arsenic health-based standard. And then also manganese and lead were found to be potential contaminants of concern in some of these private wells. This is a closer view of the West Side Soil study area within the red boundary, and then each of the sampling locations for tap water and or private well water being indicated with the blue dots. And so all of these elements are naturally found within the Earth's crust and the environment, and we can be exposed through them to them through the air, soil, water, and other sources. So we can ingest or inhale the elements, such as contaminated water or foods grown with the contaminated water or in contaminated soil. The health effects of these different elements can cause various issues, mainly nervous system problems, like memory problems, learning and behavioral issues, kidney issues, anemia, among others. And health effects can happen from even low levels of exposure over time. And then, of course, more severe effects can happen from higher levels of exposure. So currently, the EPA is in the step 3, the feasibility study, in determining how to best clean up west side soils to protect human health and environmental health. And part of that decision also is determining whether the contaminants of concern stem from our historic mining activities, or if it's naturally occurring, or a mixture of both. Really, their proposed plan that comes in step 4, that decision, and then the decision of who the responsible parties are for the cleanup, affect my solutions that I have proposed here. And I'm sure as many of you are probably aware that Superfund is a pretty complicated process and seems to always be changing. So with that in mind, my proposed solutions are increasing awareness around the private well water contamination within west side soils. Some feedback I had received in doing my paper on this was that new landowners in the area would have a well drilled, and then they would be surprised when they found out their water wasn't potable, with saying they didn't have any prior knowledge to the well being drilled that there were any issues within the area. So I feel like some opportunities there are engaging real estate professionals and well drilling companies in the discussion around west side soils, that could help them inform their clients so that their clients can make informed decisions before purchasing that land and deciding to live there and drilling a well, or if they need to make some, financial decisions on how they would address water that may or may not be potable. And also using the Butte-Silver Bow Health Department, where I work at, to engage with the residents of west side soils to help increase their knowledge on the contaminant issues within their area. There had been feedback last year when the report was released that communication from EPA didn't include understandable information for the residents to interpret the results and be able to make changes that would protect their health. So I really feel like that's something that we can step in and help with. Again, the Superfund process and EPA's decision will affect that to some degree, but I still feel like we can be in that space and helping. And then also increasing participation in the study area for west side soils. There was a low participation rate for the amount of wells that were included in the study. I feel like oftentimes in Superfund communities, it's hard for the community to trust the federal government, so that they might be less likely to allow them on their property to do testing, even if in the long run, it really is to protect their health. And then our college, Montana Tech here, has the Montana Bureau of Mining and Geology Department. They have helped sample some of those residential properties when the residents wouldn't let EPA onto the property. I feel like that's something we can lean into more and help expand on, and possibly increase participation in the study, have more data to go off of, and know the areas that we need to address that are contaminated. Another solution is enforcing excavation permit requirements within the study area. Currently, permits should be attained prior to excavating or like drilling the well. But current practice, it doesn't seem like that's happening. So I feel like looking into enforcing that, and it seems like it is enforceable and doable, but maybe just bringing that to light can help the residents and even contractors to help understand the contamination issues prior to getting themselves into the middle of it. And then lastly, if there's any instances of homeowners' wells not being covered under Superfund cleanup, based on EPA's decision, I would really like to look into financial assistance options for purchasing and installing reverse osmosis water filtration systems. The Montana Bureau of Mining and Geology had explained how they helped install those units in a nearby Superfund community. So the units were purchased under Superfund, but then they helped install, and then the homeowners were just responsible for any future maintenance and changing the filters. They had explained that so far the filters hadn't needed to be changed more than once a year, and that the maintenance on those units was very doable and financially doable for those residents. So if by chance decisions from EPA within the Superfund process were to leave anyone out, I really feel like that financial barrier shouldn't be a barrier to them protecting their own health from addressing their water contamination. References, and thank you for joining. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me at the address there. Thank you.
Next up, we have London Lambrecht.
Hi everyone, it's London talking today on my presentation regarding ways to mitigate chronic disease in the United States. And so the goal of this presentation is to combat the chronic disease issue in the United States. So too many people in the United States suffer from chronic illness. Many pieces of literature were examined to find which policies integrated into different communities had a positive impact on preventing chronic illness. More than 2/3 of all deaths in the United States are caused by chronic illness. Nearly half of all Americans suffer from at least one chronic illness. This is a concerning statistic given that chronic illness is in many ways preventable. The goal of this issue brief is to examine ways to help people not only gain knowledge on what they can do to prevent chronic illness, but ways to help educate others on the impact of chronic illness. So the issue, chronic illness affects too many people in the United States. Nearly half of all Americans suffer from at least one chronic illness. That is approximately 133 million Americans who suffer from at least one chronic illness. According to the CDC, the United States spends $4.1 trillion on chronic illness care. Knowing how many people in the United States suffer from at least one chronic illness and how much the United States spends on chronic illness care, this brief will examine ways to prevent chronic illness. Starting with identifying ways to prevent chronic illness opens the conversation about how to get others involved in taking their health into consideration when making decisions. These changes will help showcase the importance of getting a handle on chronic illness numbers, because if lifestyle changes are not made, more and more people will continue to suffer from chronic illness. So, how to solve the issue? I'm not going to go into extreme depth because we don't have enough time, and you can read through the presentation. But the first policy feature that will be studied is the education of chronic illness. Luckily, the education on chronic illness is relatively easy to digest for any personnel who are not familiar with medicine. The CDC website starts a conversation that most chronic illness can be prevented by nutrition, exercise, and avoiding alcohol and smoking. The website gives informative ways on how to best prevent and manage chronic illness, backtracking to the ways to prevent chronic illness being don't smoke, eat healthy, be active, and limit drinking. So it goes on to break down ways to combat chronic illness. And right here we're talking about smoking, so that dives into why smoking needs to be essentially not going on at all in order to combat chronic illness. And it talks about eating healthy and how that works and plays a role in preventing chronic illness, along with exercise is crucial for optimal health, heart health, which heart failure is known as the #1 cause of mortality in the United States. So again, another great way to prevent chronic illness in America. And it goes on to talk about obesity and how that increases the risk of death overall, unfortunately. So finding a way to mitigate obesity in America. And then it goes on to talk about alcohol and how limiting or not drinking at all works in favor of combating chronic illness. So those are the 4 tips. I don't have time to go into those extensively, but you can pause it and read further. But my policy recommendations are: #1, to mitigate the obesity epidemic in America, it would be beneficial to tax highly processed foods. The second one being ban alcohol and smoking. The third, restrict food dyes, added sugars, and seed oils. 4, ban advertisement of smoking, alcohol, and highly processed food. 5, health insurance reform. 6, create a grant to encourage healthy habits in communities. And 7, more nutrition education in medical schools, since medical students only receive about 19 hours of nutrition education while in medical school. And this breaks down each of the policy and why they are beneficial. And here, in determining the best policy to move forward with, starting with taxing highly processed foods may be the best way to start. This will start the conversation about the impact that eating habits have on chronic illness, and the impact will be educating people on why there is a price increase that increases because it is harmful to the body and puts Americans at higher risk of being diagnosed with chronic illness.
Our next presentation is from Amanda Leckband.
Hello, my name is Amanda Leckband, and I am a Master's of Public Health graduate student at the University of Montana. Today I will be talking about climate change, groundwater, and drinking water security, local solutions for Tucson and Pima County as framework for utilization in Montana communities. I want to start by saying that I am currently in Tucson, Arizona. I grew up in Montana, and Tucson, Arizona is a very arid and dry climate. We do have monsoons, but the moisture and anything from the monsoons quickly dries up. I grew up in Montana, and that is why I think that this could be a perfect framework for how we can utilize and focus on innovative solutions. Historically, Tucson has gotten their water supply from natural groundwater from like reservoirs, tributaries, rivers, and well water, and we get most of our water from the Colorado River. So there's some big issues, especially dealing with climate change and our bare natural 100%, to quote Disney, bare necessity of life, water. Efforts such as the Central Arizona Project, also known as CAMP, has reserved sources of water and historically has been able to provide water when we go through extreme droughts. But right now we're at a very low rate and it's very diminished. With the population growth and with strain on agricultural resources, this creates an even bigger issue. It's not just an environmental health issue, it's a public health issue. Water availability issues are a significant threat to public health, specifically low income and other affected low income communities. We also have to take into consideration that the water quality degrades and we increase contaminants even in natural resources, and no matter how hard we push and no matter how hard we are able to to address these contaminants, there's still a major increase. With these issues in mind, let's start with solution 1. One of the most promising tools that we can use is Tucson currently uses what is called a managed aquifer recharge, and this takes treated reclaimed water and injects it into the aquifers. This, because of depending on the permeability of the soil and depending on where and how it's being utilized, this can increase water capacity. Tucson has what is called Tucson's Water Heritage Project, and it's located along the Santa Cruz River. It utilizes this approach by treating wastewater that restores flow to its formerly dry riverbed, and it recharges the aquifers. But it also reduces the dependence on uncertain surface water imports. So instead of relying on just straight municipal water from the city, this actually recharges our groundwaters, our natural groundwaters. Southeast Houghton Area Recharge Project, also known as SHARP, is a really good example of this. It's a strategically located MAR, which is developed to support growth in Tucson Southeast region. And this is where there's been the massive developments. There's been an increase in population. But the wonderful thing about the SHARP program is that there are additional benefits, not just to the community itself of having water and being able to get their water, is you're able to incorporate things like public walking trails, signage, education, and native landscaping. And it can also, it like creates a community asset. People want to be there. People are able to use it. People are able to enjoy it. And it makes for a better community. Solution 2, restore natural infiltration zones by the Colorado River and tributaries. Restoring natural canals from those that have been cemented over is an example of some of the work that has been considered and has actually started in motion by going and working on these riparian corridors, and by returning a lot of the cemented canals over, can create wetlands, can create a natural environment, and can facilitate passive infiltration while also enhancing that biodiversity. So basically, we want to make sure that we have these areas that are also creating an environmentally friendly ecosystem that's naturally occurring. Things that have already been there, that were there already, and that's actually benefiting both the community and the natural environment, bringing it back to what it should be. Solution 3, community-led conservation. Tucson has a very strong tradition of conservation, but there needs to be considered for the area and the community and for the environment in which we are implementing this water-led conservation. It is important to recognize that certain areas, certain places need to customize and need to be looked at, not just as a whole, but as how that community is utilizing the water and how we can apply these programs that will help to save the water and to help generate and regenerate water. An example is the gray water reuse program, which is for like outdoor irrigation. So for those communities that have livestock, or for those communities that have gardens, you can use the gray water reuse on your gardens, obviously. And this includes water that's been used from showers and laundries. And it can be safely reused for watering these gardens and these trees. And they also provide subsidies. You can educate, you can design things for them, you can have the community involved in how they want to and how they utilize this water. So solution, oops. Sorry, I was having some issues with solution 4. So solution 4 is encouraging sustainable landscaping practices. In urban areas like Tucson, water accounts for 40% of the residential demand, and traditional landscaping often tends to not rely on non-native, or often relies on non-native plants and very intrusive and intensive plants and turf. So we're thinking plants that take a lot of water, plants that do not need to be in there. If we can reduce that water by promoting drought tolerant plants, native plants, we can reduce our groundwater usage as well. And finally, solution number 5, update local building codes to require dual plumbing in new construction. So as I stated before, Tucson's going through big growth, and so is a lot of certain areas like the east side, the north side, the way it's broken down. And in these housing complexes and in these buildings, if we were able to create a lasting infrastructure that would actually, before it happens, we could require a dual plumbing system that separates gray water from black water in all new construction. And not only does this make it more cost effective for households, but businesses that implement this, it could stop it from having to redevelop and redo and backtrack everything. This also incentivizes developers, and this also helps to create a more sustainable future. Like these policies have been put in places like California, and they have a positive return on investment for both the builders and the city. So really, what does Arizona have to do with Montana? Well, if we can focus on using these strategies for small towns, for rural towns, for even the larger towns, like the MAR system and the SHARP system, we can create a plan and a community-driven, environmentally conscious water strategy. And we can build that based off of the success that Tucson has had and the success that Tucson has continued to push forward with. We know climate change is transforming everything, not just this desert Southwest, not just Montana. We know that there's solutions that can be implemented that can help, and there's solutions that may not have worked and may not be working, which because of this foundation, because of this framework, we're able to navigate through what we need to navigate through. And so the solution is not just pushing people to save water. It's about catering to the community, involving community, and looking at environmental justice at the forefront, while still remembering that water is an important resource and is renewable as we think it is. There are ways that we need to preserve it. Thank you.
And then our final presentation is from Flathead County Health Department, Danielle Pierce.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Danielle Pierce, and I'm here today to talk about this paper, Beyond the Big Sky, Investigating Needs of Montana's Aging Population. So what I'm going to briefly do a review about, it investigates one of the issues that was identified as an area of potential concern during the 2025 Academic Health Department Symposium. Aging was one of the topics, one of the concerns, with the focus being on healthy aging, and also that there was a need for more relevant aging research in the state of Montana. Before I dive into this, I did want to say a little bit about me. Like I said before, my name is Danielle Pierce. I currently live in Whitefish, Montana. I'm a registered sanitarian at the Flathead City County Health Department. I am here at the University of Montana to get my certificate of public health. When I'm not working or doing schoolwork, I love animals and I love cats, and I work avidly in animal rescue, mainly cat rescue. So just something a little bit fun. But we'll get into the topic at hand here. So aging, until the 1960s, the prevailing view of aging was actually pretty negative. The aging process was considered a progressive linear decline toward death. Pretty negative. And researchers believed aging that it was a fixed fate, and it assigned older people a passive role without any possibility of them changing their situation. They called that a disengagement theory. Things really started to turn a little bit also in the 60s. There was Hagvik-Hurst's activity theory, and he defined successful aging as actively staying involved in enjoyable activities and strongly contrasted that idea of detachment from the Cumming and Henry theory. So with this new flip on aging, a lot more researchers and academics started to look at aging in a different light. I liked this quote. It came to be that aging is a physiological, universal, but not a uniform process of getting older, which every person will experience at an individual rate. Then studies came out and everything about what was considered successful aging. Some of the key indicators that researchers kept seeing again and again: physiological factors, physical factors, environmental factors, social, spiritual, and behavioral factors. There was also a large survey that went out what seniors considered healthy aging lifestyle habits. So that included the daily routine, physical activity, being social, eating well, maintaining body weight, and being overly healthy, like avoiding alcohol and tobacco. Okay, so that all sounds great, and healthy aging is a great idea. However, I almost feel like we're a little bit late to the game. So the current situation, demographics are radically changing. In just 2019, 1 in 11 people worldwide were 65 years or older. It's projected in 2025, 1 in 6 people worldwide will be 65 years or older. At that time, as that baby boomer demographic, they're entering their golden years, they're aging. The working population of people is actually expected to shrink and really not have much growth. So what that means while I go through this presentation is people that are going to require Medicaid, additional retirement health services, the funding for those programs, the people that contribute to that, it's actually going to shrink. So we're approaching this problem. If we might actually already be there, to be honest. So in Montana specifically, this is from the last census, these numbers. So the median age, which was in 2020, so the median age in Montana was 40.6 years old. If you look at the graph on the right, so that's from the census, 2 out of the 3 largest groups in Montana are actually between 60 and 69 years old. So that's just going to keep increasing. Then if you look at that demographic, again, people in their 70s are the next largest demographic. So the majority of Montana counties, they're expected to experience negative or very low growth in the working age population. Keep that in mind. But the retirement age is expected to grow in literally every county. Montana's proportion of retirement age residents is higher than the US average. It ranks number 6 overall. with 19.7% of its population considered geriatric, and it's projected to remain higher. So like I said before, this healthy aging thought process, that it's fantastic and stuff, but reality is we're already experiencing issues with caring for our current senior population, and we're sort of in a time crunch before our numbers really grow. And like I said, I feel like today and everyone I talk to, there is already a lack of available resources for seniors and seniors in assisted living care facilities. So I feel like if we're going to approach this, like we really have to jump the gun here. So I'm going to talk a little bit actually about Flathead County, where I live specifically. So when compared to other communities in Montana, Flathead County does appear to have a larger number of services available to seniors living here in Flathead County. But the reality is, like anytime you read an article, that our services and facilities is not meeting the demand and the needs for the seniors that are already living here. So in the photo, I just have a couple places and a couple services that Flathead County offers. So I'm just going to jump onto some of the bigger, more robust agencies in Flathead County. So the Agency on Aging here in Flathead is really phenomenal. It's a county department that provides resources for older individuals on low incomes. It offers services such as meals, which includes in-person dining, Meals on Wheels, caregiver support, senior activities. Bingo Day is a favorite. They actually are below us in our work building. Can't find a parking space on Bingo Day. And they also provide legal assistance. So in addition to the nutrition and socialization services, the agency also offers like respite care and contracts with home care providers who actually work directly with elderly people to help with things like housekeeping or getting groceries. However, all of this is amazing, but the demand has skyrocketed in recent years, and it's only expected to grow, obviously looking at the numbers. The big thing here is the funding for these programs has remained stagnant. So one of the major funding sources that the Agency on Aging uses is the Older Americans Act, and that was actually passed in 1965 in response to a concern policymakers had about lack of community social services for older folks. This act is considered to be a major vehicle funding for multiple organizations for seniors. However, the funding has lagged behind both inflation and population growth. So, and there's also been recent cuts to discretionary programs that have reduced the program funding even further. So the increased funding is critical to meet the needs that are like on our horizon with our elderly population, and to continue to, for like the Agency on Aging to continue to offer these services to our elderly. I'm going to jump to a different facility here in Flathead County. So Emmanuel Living is one of 19 senior facilities in the area that actually offer varying levels of care that include independent living, assisted living, memory support, acute, and long-term care. An ongoing issue, besides always being on a wait list, was that this facility had a hard time recruiting and retaining employees. A lot has to do with the housing costs around the Flathead County, but there was also a healthcare worker shortage. And there's also a low Medicaid reimbursement rate that makes it actually difficult for these types of organizations to keep up with costs. They have to end up writing off a lot of costs because they never receive their Medicaid reimbursement. I wanted to point this out, Emmanuel Living specifically, because in response to their difficulty to maintain and recruit staff, they actually applied through the American Rescue Plan Act to actually launch a child care program, and they call it the Growing Roots Early Learning Center. And that has actually helped to attract and retain their labor force at the operation. So like I said, though, I mean, this is great. They're fully staffed for the number of beds available, even though there's a huge need for more beds. But I wanted to bring attention, like the American Rescue Plan Act, that was created to provide short-term funding for areas that were suffering. it is like winding up, running out, basically. So I just feel like this kind of idea, a creative approach to solving a problem, could be utilized at different facilities, different counties, different areas. But we also need additional funding and government programs and grant money available to give these types of places the help that they need. So with these numbers growing, and so one thing also about assisted living is it is expensive. Not everybody can afford it. And those that do, sometimes it drains their bank. So with the demand increasing and only suspected to increase, these senior living facilities and community services, even here in Flathead County, they are starting to shift their focus to an aging in place model, which allows senior adults to stay in their homes. For example, Emmanuel Living has launched a living at home program. With this program, certified nursing assistants and aides visit seniors at their home and actually use technology where they can monitor health markers like weight and vitals remotely. And they can facilitate social outings. And Agency on Aging has also begun to move in this direction, aging in place. They've started a home modification program, and this program facilitates minor modifications in people's homes, like installing ramps, adding bathroom bars, that type of thing. These are all great things, but the situation is urgent. And planning for aging in place, like it's really hard to do it on the dime. Like needs to be like just right away. Lots of things need to be considered. Education, planning, which is paramount for not only the seniors, but their families when they're planning for care. Just getting the funding. Montana State University Extension Program, they actually offer a workshop that includes topics like legacy planning, wills, power of attorney, advanced directives. There's just so many things that come into planning, and a lot of people don't start to plan for their senior years and what they're going to do until they're like in the thick of it. So getting the education out there would be, and reaching out, like outreach would be so paramount. So what would help all these organizations would be increasing funding to expand their services. And they could reach more rural communities, and they could also do more community outreach to get more people preparing. So what next? Like I said, I think just thinking of this issue, awareness to this dilemma, it's a step in the right direction. There are multiple approaches with how to work through the issue, like focus on healthy aging, focus on advancing and growing the aging in place model, and also to explore additional funding opportunities. Preparations will not only take like a boots on the ground approach, but I also really believe legislative support. It's going to take everybody. There has to be funding, better policies, and real planning to make sure seniors have access to health care, housing, transportation, and other services. So a lot of work to do, but I think it's great that we're talking about it. So thank you for listening, and I hope this helped everyone consider some ideas about aging. Thank you so much. Have a good day.